Oh,
Have the recording on now. Yes.
thanks for your introduction, but I was feeling a bit odd, the usual things about, numerous awards and numerous publications. I don't have numerous awards.
You do.
Two, just two, and all that. So I feel like very odd to be introduced like that. Anyway, so thank you for asking me. As I said, I'm quite nervous in doing this session because one thing, it's not in my comfort zone. I'm okay with subject matters or like research methodology, but talking about Earth theory, so very nervous. And also SET, social exchange theory, is like one of the research theory that is used in management research. So a small mortal like me to talk about social exchange theory makes me feel like very incompetent to do so. So just to say, as part of introduction, that there is so much in social exchange theory. People have you in terms of like what has been, how it has been used in management research, as well as in terms of critique. Also, there is a lot, but I will try to cover at least some part of it to give you a flavor. And also remember, it's not, I always say that, what I know is like just a handful, fistful. So what I don't know is like the size of this universe. So please keep in mind that, I know some part of the social exchange theory, but not the entirety. But I will share whatever I know with you all, right? Okay, as I said, social exchange theory is one of the well-used theory in organization and management research. It is one of the popular theories under functionalist theory. So it's like in quantitative positivistic studies, you will see a social exchange theory being used. Like some popular theories are social support theory, contingency theory, and so on. But I will be focusing on social exchange theory alone today. Right. So basically, social exchange theory has been existent for, you can see from these citations, for like 6 decades or more. They usually cite Homan's 1958 paper as one of the seminal papers where social exchange as a behavior was sort of first talked about. Before we talk about social exchange theory or social exchange, I need to distinguish social exchange from economic exchange. Economic exchange is where you have, it can be a relationship, maybe there is no relationship, but where you have let's say a deal or negotiation between like two parties, but where money is sort of involved. So, you can go to a shop and bargain and pay the price to get a bread or, buy vegetables. So there, you look for more benefits. So you are not really, loyal or dependent on the other party. You shop around, right? So economic exchange is where you buy things, or you might be like even barter, but it's not looked at as social exchange. So social exchange is where this relationship between two people, but you will see later on there can be even groups like society as well. But basically, for simplicity, let's define social exchange as a sort of relationship between two parties or two people, where you have a relationship, but at the same time, you sort of have this expectation of that you will get something in return during that process of that relationship. Now, if you look at blouse, there is some sound from somewhere. Okay. So if you look at blouse definition, voluntary actions of people. So voluntary means people do it because they want to do it, right? There is no other, coercion or anything. So voluntary actions of individuals that are motivated by the return they are expected to bring and typically do in fact bring from others. So we do things, right? I might go out of my way to help maybe a colleague or whatever. But maybe back of my mind, you expect something in return, maybe of the same value, same equal, or something that, later on you can count on that person to help you, sort of like that. Hohmann's definition is the exchange of activity, tangible or intangible, right? So intangible can be even things like, support, lending your ear to hear some people out, or love, and more or less rewarding or costly between the two, at least two persons. So here you would see they are using the word rewards, cost, because when you do something to somebody, even though it's voluntary, it is a cost for you, right? So you do when you get that benefit or reward back from them, it is hope that you sort of equalize the cost and the benefit, right? So there is this, that over time, whatever you have spent, when I say spent, it's not money, but the effort, whatever you have put on that relationship, that in that social exchange, the benefit will sort of equalize, so that it's like zero sum. Emerson has said it's a series of interactions that generate obligation. So these are some of the characteristics when we are using social exchange theory. You will see we use these words like obligation, rewards, cost, resources like, what you exchange between the two people, about tangibility, intangibility. These are some of the tenets or characteristics of this social exchange theory that you can sort of see in the definition. Right. So since I was talking and trying to differentiate social exchange and economic exchange, let me go to this typology. So you will see this is what we are talking about in social exchange theory. We are not talking about the economic exchange, right? It's the social, what is transacted also is social in terms of tangible, intangible. We will be later looking at all these resources that are looked at as what can be transacted in social exchange. And the relationship also is like between two people, which is voluntary, nothing monetary involved. So that is what we classify comes under the social exchange theory. This part, this quadrant is what comes under the economic exchange. So it is this. Right. So before I go further, although I said Hohmann's 1958 is one of the seminal paper or the start of where he started talking about social exchange as a behavior. But when they trace social exchange theory or the social behavior, you would see the roots of social exchange theory where, Socrates, Thomas Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, they have talked about social contract theory. Then Adam Smith's Wealth of Nation has talked about two parties drawing mutual benefit, right? So you do something which is cost, but at the same time, when you get that reward back, you are benefiting. So both people are benefit because what is cost to you is a benefit to the other person when the person receives it, right? So there is this reference, although they haven't used the word social exchange, relationship, or social exchange theory, people have drawn gone back to these to say, okay, these are some of the roots, or people have talked about this even as far back as 1776. Then so these are like some of the sociology, anthropological studies where they have looked at mutual exchange, mutually beneficial exchange among people in society. Malinowski talked about returning of favor. So all these goes back to, this cost and benefit things that you get back. You do something and you get things back. And not only in management theory, social exchange theory is used a lot in anthropology, social psychology, and even sociology. So you can see the usefulness, or how the depth and breadth of usage of social exchange theory in various fields of research. That's why I said, am I really competent to talk about this? I feel such a mortal trying to talk about it. Right. So let me go now to the social exchange theory. So these are some of the tenets or principles of social exchange theory. So there is, in this relationship, you will see, because there is this exchange. So there is an exchange of resources like love, help, support, information, caring, and things like that. So there is this exchange of resources that are shared between these two parties. And there is this reciprocity. Reciprocity means you do something, and the other person will return it, do something back. You reciprocate. There can be positive reciprocity where you do something good and you expect something good back from them. There is also negative reciprocity where, you hit somebody, harm somebody, and you get harm back, right? The negative. Then obligation, this feeling of obligation, that's what sort of motivates you to reciprocate, this obligation. Because when you do something, the other person feels, oh my God, this person has done this to me, has helped me so much over time. So I need to do something in return to this person. You have that feeling and you are waiting for an occasion to do something back, right? So that obligation, feeling of obligation. And as I sort of mentioned this, in social exchange theory, you have this relationship that builds up over a long period of time. So sometimes this exchange of resources happens after some time. So initially there might be this relationship that is built up, and the exchange of resources might happen well into your relationship. Or maybe it can start off with this exchange where you do something, and through that you see a friendship, trust, a long-term relationship building. And then this reciprocity can happen, maybe even several years later. There is no sort of timeline when this reciprocity happens. And another characteristic of this relationship that is built over time and that exists over time, long term, is that there is trust, right? Because without trust, you can't expect, this return, that you will get this return from this person at some point of time. So you can see there is this interdependency in this relationship of feeling obligation, of getting things back, you do something, right? So all these are like various principles or characteristics that we use when we are building our hypothesis to show relationship between two variables. You will see repeatedly in the management literature, these are the terms that we use to build our arguments to say why these two variables will be related in terms of trust, in terms of this reciprocity, what is being exchanged, and so on. As I was trying to, through these principles, say, the relationships evolve over time into trusting, loyal, mutual commitment, right? So in that relationship, for this reciprocity to happen, parties must abide by certain rules of exchange, right? It's not a written exchange, but we have it as sometimes like norms, these rules of exchange, right? Or when we are brought up in our society, in our families, we are socialized about these rules of exchange. Just a simple example, nowadays that sort of culture is not there. But when we were small, growing up in Jaffna, I remember there was this thing of going visiting to people's houses. So we go visiting because they are friends, long-term relationship. And then you will see after maybe a month or so that family will come and visit us, right? So those are the things directly and indirectly we have been socialized to say, okay, when we go, they will come to our house, right? We might organize a lunch for so many people, and after so many, might be even a year, another one of that family might have a lunch and invite all of us. So there again, you have this reciprocity, and during that process, you can also see this relationship, interdependence, trust, loyalty, all that sort of building up as we go along, right? So it's not a one-off thing, right? All right, so I have actually taken from Propenzano and Mitchell. It's an old paper, 2005, but it's a good paper. After you read Blau, Homans, Goldner, whatever those seminal papers, I would say, please, if you are interested and you want to sort of identify theoretical gaps, how else social exchange theory can be used, I would say Propenzano and Mitchell's paper is really good because they have identified all these areas where further research is needed, because we have been always more or less focusing on reciprocity, obligation, trust, and things like that. And we haven't been focusing on these characteristics of social exchange in management research. So they have identified a lot of areas where social exchange theory is still like this black box where we don't know much about. So if you all are interested to use social exchange theory or further improve social exchange theory, read Mitchell and Propenzano and Mitchell's paper. And also, there is another paper by them, Propenzano et al. In 2017, where they talk, it's titled Social Exchange Theory, a Critical Review with Theoretical Remedies. I just glanced through it. So that is also another paper if you all are interested in using social exchange theory to read further. Because sometimes reading Homans, Goldner, Emerson, or Blau can be sometimes a bit hard, but the Propenzano Mitchell's paper is very easy to read. Right. I'm just chugging along. If you all need any clarification, anybody who is familiar with social exchange theory wants to jump in and say anything, please feel free to jump in, right? I think if you raise your hands, I should be able to see that message. Right. So as I said, this is from Propenzano and Mitchell's paper, where they talk about this. Remember here, they say rules of exchange. So they are sort of going into details about these rules of exchange and norms of exchange, as well as rules of exchange, right? Because that's the sort of foundation of these rules of exchange in social exchange theory. Because if people don't abide by that rules of exchange, if they don't have the norms of exchange in their blood, there won't be a social exchange relationship. You will just get everything from others, and you won't return that to those people, and then the relationship will break down, right? People will think, this person is exploiting us, just getting anything, nothing in return. They will cut you off, right? So when they talk about this reciprocity rules, What they say is reciprocity can be looked at as an interdependent exchange. So basically, that's what we do, right? You do something that sort of creates this obligation for you to do something back. So it is interdependent. It depends on what you do, the value, how you do, how that is perceived by the other person. And then the other person, the person who received it, reciprocates by doing something similar, right? Reciprocity is also looked at as a folklore. So if you think reciprocity is like a folklore, what they mean is it's like a culture. So this is where I said when we are socialized, we look at it as things that when somebody does, you need to return it, do something back. But this is slightly different. Now, in cultures like us, where we believe in karma, the reciprocity doesn't have to be done by us, the person who received it. Now, because in reciprocity as an interdependent exchange, the person who received it gives it back, right? You received help from that person when I was in need, and let's say Arosha helped me. Then I feel like, oh, I need to, I'm obligated to Arosha to do something back to her. And maybe, several years later, when she, really needs some help, I will do something back to her. But in reciprocity as a folklore, because it's something in terms of culture, right? Our beliefs in certain things that become, certain characteristics in our culture, it is not something that we need to do something back. So we always believe, right? Whether it's the politicians or whether, somebody in your family, it can be somebody, maybe it can be anybody, right? Could have done something bad to you, right? So what you do is you think, don't worry about it. We don't, you might feel angry, whatever, you want to do something back. Same typical harm or whatever to do that person back. But then you will think, no, I know it, karma will take care of this person, right? Karma will take care. So, somewhere along the line, they will get it, right? You do something bad and you will get it. Maybe I might not do something bad to that person, but, somewhere somebody else, maybe that person's another enemy might, reciprocate for what all these bad evils this person has done. So there we believe that this person will get reciprocity, that's a punishment or, something back, but it's not necessarily that you need to do. Somebody in our society, somebody will take care of it, right? They will get this return. So that is what reciprocity as a folklore is. The other characteristic is reciprocity as a norm or an individual orientation. Now, this is something very important. Now, although this is social exchange theory as a positivist theory is a universal theory which is applicable to any culture, any society in terms of, this interdependent exchange that, people will feel obligated and will return, reciprocate what you have done to them. That reciprocity actually depends on this norm of reciprocity or this individual orientation. So what we mean by norm of reciprocity is in terms of our individual values, right? Of course, this is also part of culture, but this becomes part of us, our values, what we stand for, how much we believe. So we actually practice that in our life, right? So if somebody has very high norm of reciprocity, when you do something to another person, that reciprocity, you might get something more than what you did. And you might get that return much sooner than another person, because my norm is very high. I feel, inside me, I'm like, I need to do something, Harosha, help me, Harosha, help me. I'm always looking for when I can return that. So, but if the person has very low norm of reciprocity, or maybe, no norm of reciprocity, right? There are people who say, oh yeah, I mean, we generalize about the younger generation to say it's a generation of entitlement, right? So if there is somebody who is actually having this entitlement feeling, they won't have something like this norm of reciprocity. It will be very low or zero. So for those people, they won't feel, yeah, I'm entitled to this, let them do, right? It's their duty to do. Why should I do something in return? It's sort of like, parents, of course, we say parents show all this love to their children, bringing them up. It's is actually altruism. They are not really expecting anything, but you can see the relationship between parents.
Miss, I lost you there for a minute. Can others hear?
It is the same,
No,
Miss.
miss.
Yeah.
No.
Pavithra Miss can't hear you.
So I was talking about, you can even look at the relationship between parents and children as a social exchange theory. Although parents might say, it's for altruism, we are not, we are really doing it out of love for our children, to look after them, bring them up, the hardships they go through. But, you can see, even if they don't expect something in return, the children might feel obligation and reciprocate by looking after them, providing for them when they are older. Or sometimes parents themselves say, when things don't happen the way they were thinking, and the children become, let's say, useless, and whatever I've heard them saying, I brought up and I spent so much on you, educated you, brought up all you like this, and I thought you will look after me in my old age, but you didn't. So those type of things reflect the social exchange theory. But why they are not getting anything in return is that the children don't have, if the children don't have the norm of reciprocity, where it's their value to bring them up. If they become selfish, only care about themselves, and they think, okay, it was their, I didn't ask to be born. It was their decision to have me, and it was their duty to bring me up. Why should I do something? So if they don't have that norm of reciprocity, then you won't have that reciprocity return of the benefits of whatever the cost that was incurred by their parents in terms of love, looking after them, sleepless nights when they were baby and all that. There is no return. So you will see in although this social exchange theory is applicable to any society, in any society, any country, individuals, everybody don't have or believe in the same cultural values. We see differences. So you would see there are people with high norms of reciprocity and people who don't have. So that's why, the social exchange theory that exchanges, relationships that thrive and succeed are with people who have norms of reciprocity. And that fail, those relationships that fail are where you don't, those people, one side has, but the other side, the receiving side, doesn't have the norms of reciprocity. So, so you will see the relationship, the degree of success, failure, how much, whether even if your hypothesis gets supported or not, maybe it's because these individuals do or do not have this. So in terms of management research in organizations, people have used social exchange theory, assuming the individuals have this norm of reciprocity and the independent. So folklore, because there is no reciprocity. You think, karma will take care of it. We don't really use that aspect, because then there is no relationship back. So you can't really hypothesize and say, when supervisor does this, the employee will return. That part we can't argue if it's assumed to be a folklore. So what is useful to develop hypotheses in positivistic research is this interdependent exchange and the norm of reciprocity aspect in this social exchange theory. Now, there are some research where they have also looked at in social exchange about negotiations. I have also looked at in my PhD about negotiations that happen between husband and wife. Now, generally, when you hear the word negotiation, actually economic exchange comes to mind, because it's only in economic exchange we bargain, right? Somebody quotes something and you say, no, that's too much, please reduce the price, and you bargain. But there are some studies that show even in social exchange theory, you can sort of bargain to say, you do this, you share this, who does what work, let's say in unpaid labor or, among husband and wife, you can. But the darker side of negotiation in social exchange, whether it's like in families, among couple, or in organizations, among teams, between a supervisor and subordinate, is that the power dynamics come into play, right? Who has more power to take more benefit out of that exchange, and whether it's a fair exchange relationship that they come to after negotiation. So that is something some research has pointed out, and you also need to keep in mind about the power dynamics. So and also remember, in one of our earlier definitions, we said it's a voluntary action, right? So when you negotiate, you're actually negotiating this voluntary. So it sort of sounds contradictory, right? Then it's not really voluntary. If you still negotiate and say, you need to do this and I will do this and how much and when and all that. So that sort of aspect goes, but still they are expanding the boundaries of social exchange theory to include negotiation as well, as form of building the relationship, and as also for this reciprocity. Now these are according to Cropenzano and Mitchell, this beyond reciprocity and negotiated rules, these aspects are should be part of the social exchange principles, or aspects that social exchange relationship should talk about. But this is where not much or no research has been done in terms of rationality, because what they are saying is, in this social exchange relationship, you wanting to help somebody, go out of their way to help, like this OCB, organizational citizenship behavior, where you go out of the way to help somebody or whatever. And when there are, now let's say in our department, there are 10 people, right? We might have relationship with few of them very close. So how do we decide with whom we have closer relationship, go out of the way to help and not the other person? So those are all, what they're saying is there's a lot of decision making happening in our heads in this social exchange relationship. So when there is decision making happening, we assume humans are rational. So this question about, are we really rational in our decision making, or are we irrational? How are we actually making this decisions informing this social exchange theory? Not much is known about it, right? So they are calling it like the black box. There is still a lot of unknown in this mediator. So you can look at social exchange relationship as a mediator in between two variables. So there is a big black box where, what happens inside these humans in our thinking, all that is still not known, right? So one aspect is this rationality in our decision making, informing and continuing this, or even negotiating in the social exchange. Then the other one, I alluded to this when I was talking about parents and children, about altruism. Is there a role, or is there a role for altruism in social exchange? Because if there is a real altruism, you don't expect anything in return, right? You do without any return expectation. You want to help. But then the question is there actually altruism, right? That's one question we need to answer. The other one is, okay, I might do something really altruistically without any obligation, but the other person might still feel obligated. And if that person has a high norm of reciprocity, I might still, although I did something without the expectation of return, but I might still get something. I might still get something in return from that person later. So that type of relationship where people act in altruism and getting something back, how does this person, react and what happens? So that type of social exchange relationships haven't been looked at. And then in sociology, they have also, this is something you can maybe even in organizations look at, which is different from what we have been talking about, where we have social exchange. We are always talking about relationship with two people, but here they are talking about group gains, where, certain, let's say, certain societies, let's say the Amazon tribe or various tribes like that, it's not a relationship between two people. Each one has a role to play in that society or tribe. So they do that, and whatever, so it's a cost. I mean, when they do something, it's a cost not to an individual, but towards their tribe, their group. And when you find something or want to give it back, you don't return it to that individual. Everything goes to so-called common pot. And then people take it from there. So which is a slightly different social exchange to the traditional, capitalistic sort of relationship where it's like between two individuals. This is like very group, right? So and the expectation is when everything goes to a common pot, you take what you need, right? But you might have your cost towards the tribe might have been good, more than what you gain. But, your thinking is over time, it will even out, right? And then the benefit is also, you don't attribute it, what you take from that common pot, you don't attribute it to a single person. It's from us, right? What you do is also for you all. What you gain from that common pot is also what you get from the group, right? So the relationship, the social exchange relationship that is built is among a group of people. So now they are thinking in terms of in society, like in sociological studies among tribes, or, maybe it's a village, maybe a community center, whatever you can think of, all that, like a women's collective, right? I'm sure, Savandi, you can relate to like a women's collective where, everything goes to a common pot and we share it equally, right? So in these type of situations, so we need to see whether is this possible in teamwork. Now in organizations, they are implementing, high performance work systems and, teams. So is this possible to do in teams? So it's something very new for management, but very relevant and possible in social societies and sort of these women's collective or cooperative society in that type of organization forms. There is another one they are talking about is this rank equilibrium or status, where you don't get the equal sort of treatment, but depending on who you are in that relationship, your status, like whether you are a VIP or like in Sri Lankan school admissions, we have this legacy system where if you are an old boy or old girl of that school, you are considered, you get more points or considered favorably than any other parents' admissions for the children. So there is also, so there is no money, right? But the social exchange is, you contribute to your past pupil association, be member, you have helped the, build up, you were a past student, so you are at a higher rank or a status than another person in that social exchange. So you get more benefit, or, in the admission criteria, you are looked more favorably than the other admissions. Then competition, which is sort of polar opposite to altruism. So how does social exchange work in a competitive environment? Is that possible? So they are talking about, competition, trying to cut that person out, or if that person, does something bad, do something bad in return to that person, or, how in that competition environment social exchange works. So these are areas not much or hardly looked at, but possible areas to use social exchange, or so these are also considered as possible areas where social exchange theory can be used, and considered as part of different types of social exchanges that can be researched about. So as I was saying earlier, these are some of the tangible and intangible resources of exchange. This is by 4 and 4 who have come up with these six resources that can be considered in social exchange. Love, status, as I was saying here, status, information, money too, but not like a, financial exchange, but, helping people when they need it, goods and services. Now, in management research, most of the time we look at information sharing by the supervisor, or, instead of love, we look at support. Perceived organizational support, perceived supervisor support. You feel the, they give recognition and really care about you. So love meanings, not really love like in between spouses or between parents and children, but broader sort of care. So even in my research, I looked at, this resource exchange. But you can look at others, but these are the, love, support, information, status are the mostly used one in management risk. This is also, am I okay for time, Arosha?
Yes, miss.
Okay, right. So again, this part is also from Cropenzano and Mitchell. I can't now remember who this is from. Contemporary model of social exchange. Again, these are areas that people haven't thought of, but these are again part of the black box that we have to think of in terms of like the causal relationship. Is it the social exchange of these type of resources? Somebody that gives something like a support, love, that then produces and starts the ball rolling in terms of social exchange theory? Or do we establish the social exchange theory, which then sort of makes you feel you want to give something in terms of resources to the other person, and it sort of moves on from there? So the causal relationship is still not clear, but what they say is it can be either way. It doesn't have to be either this or this. It can be either way. And again, these are things that can be researched. The actor's initial treatment towards the, the other party, how the other party really reacts, what goes on. So for these type of things, maybe you can even do positivistic research, but from qualitative way, approach to really talk to them and see, what makes them, pick that person to start this relationship or give a resource to them, how relationships are formed. So these are things that are areas for future research, right? So using social exchange relationship and social exchange theory, these are some of the variables that we have been using in management research. Perceived organizational support, which is again a resource, right? Because you perceive that your organization cares for you. They really, it's not just a economic exchange where they pay you and then you give your labor to them, but above and beyond, they really care about your welfare. So when you perceive something like that, you receive it, but you have this feeling of obligation to return. So you return it in terms of loyalty, you return it in terms of organizational citizenship behavior, you return it in terms of remaining in the company rather than leaving. So those type of, positive relationships between POS and positive work outcomes have been well researched using social exchange theory. The other one is LMX, leader member exchange, which I used in my PhD as well. So leader member exchange is a characteristic of social exchange where, among the subordinates, the supervisor really cares and has a good quality relationship with only a few of the subordinates. That again, creates this long-term trusted, loyal relationship. You feel obligated to return something, right? So you will see POS and LMX are characteristic sort of outcome of this social exchange, as well as you can use these variables to establish relationships with various organizational and employee outcomes using social exchange social exchange theory. Similar to perceived organizational support, there is also organizational commitment to employees, right? How employees feel organization is committed towards them, their welfare. So they sort of distinguish it with POS. So that also can used in social exchange theory. Then there is team support, supervisory support. So these are all sort of falling into this exchange, right? Love or support exchange. Then supervisory support and trust, right? If there is trust, the supervisor trusts you, the organization trusts you, right? What will happen now? Earlier, when we were talking about, working from home and all that, HR would say, no, we don't trust, what if they are not really working? But, with the COVID, there was, overnight, all that trust, problems with trust and, went out of the window and, people worked. People actually overworked, right? So actually there is trust. Then suddenly they realize, yes, there is trust. And then you see, you can then look at social exchange theory. Okay, when people trust you, what are the outcomes? So these are some of the areas that has been well researched using social exchange theory. But you would also see, in psychological contract, organizational justice, especially like distributive justice and all that thing, how people perceive that. And you can use that perception to using social exchange theory to predict and propose various positive relationship. So social power, networks. So this is where even this negotiation and all that comes in. So networks, board independence, leadership, organizational justice, psychological contract are other fields where in management research, social exchange theory has been used. So I would now like to share with you some research where social exchange theory and variables from social exchange has been used to do research. So first, let me share my PhD study. So you will see I have used social exchange theory I use social exchange theory to establish the relationship between H1. And you will also see I have used social leader-member exchange, which is a characteristic of the social exchange. And I adapted it to come up with another variable. I called it partner exchange to refer to the quality relationship between the husband and wife. However, to establish the hypothesis for H2, I use social support theory. But for H1, I use social exchange theory and social support theory to establish a U-shaped relationship. So this is one example where variables from social exchange and social exchange theory was used to propose a hypothesis. So one example. And then my PhD student who has just completed, he has used perceived organizational support as well as norm of reciprocity as a variable. We talked about it, right? So he didn't consider folklore nor the independent, but as an individual, because you will see employee engagement, however much the company does good things, and even though they still perceive it as support, but they might not engage that. So he's arguing this is like a boundary spanning variable where, you know, it depends on the people, individual people. If they don't have that norm of reciprocity, even though you receive these benefits, perceive companies supporting you in so much way, you might still not, you know, reciprocate, feel that obligation to reciprocate and show your engagement. So here he is using POS as a variable and norm of reciprocity from the social exchange in his conceptual model. Then this one is a study I did with my colleague, late colleague Jayakodi. Again, you would see perceived FSSP, how when that is perceived, that can, you know, improved or you are able to manage. So this is again a perceived support, as well as we have used perceived organizational support. So POS is a very popular variable in social exchange. These are from various, this is Vatsala Vikramasinghe's paper. You can see perceived organizational support, how, as I was saying, organizational citizenship behavior, right? So if you use social exchange theory, when you perceive your organization is supporting you, then to reciprocate, employees go out of their way to help their peers, their subordinates, or even the organization. So it has been used in that way in their publication. Then another study by Erdogan et al. 2004, they have used LMX, POS, and social exchange theory to establish the relationship, how you know, these variables can have you know, career satisfaction and things like that. And the other one is Harris and Kashmir, where they have again used LMX. They too, I think, had a curvilinear relationship like what I proposed in my PhD. Right. Then Eder and Eisenberger looked at, again, POS. Sorry, because POS is a popular one and I have used POS. I have lots of articles on POS and LMS. So most of my these examples I'm using, but you know, there are other articles on justice and psychological contract as well. It's sorry that I haven't included them. So here again, this is perceived organizational support, how you know, that you know, employee. So the positive outcome is it reduces individual tardiness and the individual withdrawal goes down. So those are like the but only thing, they are using POS, which is from social exchange, but quite a lot of time, a sort of an offshoot from social exchange theory is organizational support theory. So a lot of times we tend to sort of go on that track and use organizational support theory as well. Right. So these are some of the only a few of the references that I have used or referred to. These are, as I said, some of the seminal work, Blau, Emerson, Goldner, Homans. In terms of negotiated social exchange, Mohm is one of the people who have done a lot of research on negotiated social exchange. And this is one of their articles. And as I said, these are the Provenzano's work on social exchange theory and the future. Right. So that's my take on social exchange theory. And we are now open to questions and discussion.
Thank you very much, Miss. Any questions from the audience? A question from me is, now you said this is mostly being used in quantitative research, but I'm sure you actually mentioned a couple of instances where this can be used in qualitative research as well. So this sort of applies to any theory in general. Do you think now a theory that is generally considered to be a positivistic theory being used in an anti-positivistic study would be an issue for students or for researchers?
Yeah, so maybe I said it wrong. What I actually meant was, because you can see in this social exchange theory, why it's very positivistic and people use it is, now, if I take LMX as a variable or POS as a variable, those are like resources, right? Because quality of exchange, your supervisor goes out of the way to help you, settle you down and, care for you, provide you information and all that. So you are receiving these resources initially from that person. Remember, there was this chicken and egg sort of question, does resources come and then the social exchange or whatever. So if I take this example of where resources come first, right? And so in that case, when the resources come first, you start let's say as a new employee, you feel, oh, this supervisor is nice, head is nice, they are doing this. And initially you want that support, right? All this information, you want to settle down. But after some time, it sort of builds up. So that sort of leads to, so you can see there is this sort of causality, first step. Second step is when the employee who receives that, you start to establish. So you always go to that person to talk to when you have problem and whatever. So you will see social exchange becomes like a mediator. And then because there is this trust, loyalty, you like that person, friendship and all that, that obligation then leads to the outcome of, OCB or something like that. So you can't really use that in a qualitative research because they are taking, because in qualitative, what I actually meant was there, you can talk to the people, not about this process, but things like what is happening in their head. Now, let's say you as a head, you try to help somebody. So we can, take that from the social exchange theory or that aspect, but maybe go through in terms of your behavior or thinking, your values, what made you actually, help out or, identify that person to, help. Now, you might have so many subordinates, but why do you have closer relationship with only few of them? What made you, so that part. So there you are not really using social exchange theory, but we need to understand what goes on in our head to fully understand, so that maybe those outcomes can be brought into this black box to explain how this social exchange works. That's what I actually meant.
Okay, so you mean to say that as long as we are not looking at a causal relationship as such, you can still use social exchange theory
to identify a possible area.
Okay.
Some of the things that are still not explained in social exchange theory, some of the things that Provenzano Mitchell call it as the black box, some of those areas that needs further explain. That's how theories are built, right? You go into depth, explore and all that. That's how the theory is built. So you go to do that part, but for that you might need different theory, some other thing to understand why people are behaving, and then bring that outcome into social exchange theory to expand and explain this black box.
Okay, so another question related to that. Now, how you use a theory? Now, this is not on social exchange theory as such, but a general question on theory. How you use theory in a qualitative research might differ to how you use it in a quantitative research. So taking maybe SET as example, can you just briefly explain for the benefit of especially the research students here, how you would use the theory in a quantitative research?
Okay, so if I go back to, let me go back to this. I don't know, have they done it, but I will just assume it's a CT and go back, right? So POS stands for perceived organizational support. How the employees, any employee, can be lower level, middle level, whoever who is in, how we perceive organization, not an individual person, but organization as a whole, that they are supportive of you. So in that case of, they really care about my career, that I want, that I need to achieve my career, my well-being, that the company cares about my well-being, you know, they go out of the way to help me, like those are some of the items. So those are like resources that you are tangible, intangible resources that you are getting. So using social exchange theory, how we would argue is, okay, if the organization is perceived to be caring of the subordinate, and the subordinate perceives that the organization is really caring or more and over this economic exchange, but they really care about you as an individual, you feel good. You and also over time, you start to, if you have that norm of reciprocity, when you feel obligated, you want to return because they are so nice, the company is so nice, the supervisor is so nice, whatever, you feel you want to return something. So your return here, sort of like this group gain, doesn't have to be necessarily now, because this is organization, not an individual, right? So you want to give something back to the organization. So one of the ways you can give back to the organization is organizational citizenship behavior, where you go over and beyond your job description to do things, right? You can volunteer to, on behalf of the company, volunteer to do social service, like the CSR work that the companies do, or when new people come, you take it upon yourself to also help those people, you know, go out of the way to help your peers when they are in trouble, to, you know, say, I will do it for you, you go, your father is in hospital, you go, I will help out, you know, take care, don't worry, sort of like that. So that's the return. So that is because there is this relationship, you have been working for the company, you know, you feel they have been doing things for you, you want to return something. So that's how they, you argue based on those characteristics of relationship, resources you feel, how you obligated you are, you become, and then you want to reciprocate. So that sort of builds. So you continue to do that. Company continues to socially support you. You feel to get, you know, obligated, and in various ways, you will give that return. So that's why there is this long term also in that relationship, right? So if I go back to my research, and here, as I said, I used social support and social exchange theory to come up with this relationship. So my argument here was, okay, leader-member exchange. Again, a leader has so many subordinates, but all the relationship that leader, a supervisor has with is not equal, right? You might have 10 people, but your relationship with your 10 people are not the same. With some people, you have a, you know, more closeness than with the other. So that quality of relationship differs, right? So we really don't know why, what makes that. But, with some people, maybe it's the personality fit, or, you identify somebody as, really good, or care, maybe you feel they are vulnerable, they need additional support, whatever it may be. With some people, you give them additional this resource in terms of care, support, love, information, all those things. So the person who is, so in my case, what I said is, when an employee has work-family conflict, that stress takes over you. You really feel, you're struggling to, it's like flood, right? You're trying to, struggle. So if you have a good quality relationship with your supervisor, they will be more understanding that you have this, children sick, whatever you need to. But because you have been working in that organization and the supervisor for a long time, they know you will do the work. You might take time off now, or you go early because the child is sick or parent is sick, but they know you will finish the work. That trust is also there because you already have a good relationship. So when you are really stressed out with work-family conflict, you just receive whatever resources you can get to survive. But so their first part, I'm saying it's social support theory. So I'm first part of that, when you are receiving these resources, those resources help you to reduce your work-family conflict. So for that part of the relationship, I used social support theory to predict a negative relationship between LMX and the work-family conflict. And then what I said was, after a point, when you are really, survive the flood of stress of work-family conflict, you are now, I can manage both work and family. At that time, it sort of hits you, okay, for so long, I have got the benefit. Supervisor has been understanding, they have been caring, helping, whatever. Now it's time for me to give something. I'm really obliged to this company, to this supervisor. Now it's high time I have to reciprocate for all the care they have given. So then that will motivate them to, get more work long hours, say yes to a new project, whatever. So that reciprocity starts. And when the reciprocity starts and they feel, take on more work and whatever, then I argue that their work-family conflict will rise again. So my proposal, what I did was, so based on, so I proposed sort of a U-shaped relationship. So as the, here this is my independent variable was LMX. My dependent variable here was work-family conflict. So what I said was, initially, as your LMX quality of relationship with your supervisor increases, that's as you get that support as a social support, when it increases, you are currently high in your work-family conflict, comes down. So for this part, I use social support theory. So now you have come to this point, sorry. So now you have come to this point where your work-family conflict is manageable, right? You have survived the flood. So here at that point, your obligation kicks in. You want to reciprocate. So you take on more workload. As you take on more workload, your work-family conflict sort of increases. So for this part, I said used SET. And for this part, I used social support theory and proposed a U-shaped relationship. So again, obligation, reciprocity, resources, those characteristics of the loyalty, long-term relationship, they know you, you know them, trust. So all those characteristics were used to propose why these two variables will be related and how they will be related.
Okay, thank you. So basically in developing the hypothesis as well as in explaining your findings, you will be using the theory.
Those characteristics, yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Madam Nalaki here.
Nalaka. Yes, Nalaka.
At the starting point of the session, I thought this is a kind of a qualitative theory, but my hope goes off, and I plan to apply this in employee engagement in qualitative perspective. What would you think, ma'am?
As I was saying, in qualitative, I mean, I would be careful. Now, we can do qualitative research in positivistic research as well, where you are trying to sort of identify what is happening, and not the interpretive social construction type of or grounded theory like what Arosha or the ethnography type of research that Savandi and others, or Dinuka's postmodern, that type of qualitative. I wouldn't use this, but you can still sort of the type of questions you ask, and then how you look at. You can also use qualitative research in positivistic research. So if you are going to do that, maybe you can use it, but real qualitative research, I wouldn't say you can use it, because this is, as you can see, because there you are trying to sort of really understand what is going on, not about this causal relationship, this process, right? So I wouldn't, I don't think, I haven't seen SCT actually being used in that type of qualitative research.
Shall I add something, Miss?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yes, now, I completely agree with your view on use of social exchange theory in qualitative or interpretive studies. Since this is, clearly labeled, the SCT is clearly labeled as a functionalist theory. I think we have to be very careful if you are considering it for a qualitative study, because I don't think you can do the sort of understanding of your whatever the research problems or your arguments with this. But when it's come to research publications, journals and all, they straight away will say your approach, the methodology and the theory is contradicts. It is clearly contradicting. The theoretical approach and the methodological approach is contradicting. Therefore, I am even not recommending to use social exchange theory in qualitative or interpretive studies. So what happened was, when I wanted, as Pavithra said, to understand a certain concept, when something is regarded as a sort of a resource of exchange, right? In my case, I did study on knowledge workers, whereas knowledge is considered as a resource of exchange. So I was trying to explain how knowledge workers experience knowledge as an exchange in their knowledge work, right? Even for that, when I was, sending my conceptual paper, all were rejected based on that contradiction. And even I had to change, even my school did not accept that. Therefore, I had to shift it to interactional ritual theory. That happened. So therefore, I don't even recommend to use this in qualitative studies. So that's my experiences.
Thanks, Mayuri. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Can I just add,
Yes, please, Savani.
from a qualitative perspective, there are so many sociological theories. If you want to use, there is a supermarket. You just pick from a range of sociological theories. If you are interested in understanding a phenomenon deeply, that can be done rather than understanding a relationship. So I think we need to understand why a particular theory, what is the purpose of that particular theory when we're actually using it. Just to add, please.
Yeah, thanks, Savandi. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's why, I mean, that's why it's good to always go to other areas, like what Savandi pointed out. I mean, if you read certain, if you go to the field of psychology, sociology, wealth of, you will come up with, you can identify theories which not necessarily have been used in management, but is widely used in trying to understand people. So for qualitative research, you know, you might be able to identify appropriate theories there. Gihan?
Yeah, madam, is there any connection with the social exchange theory? Is there a connection with actor network theory, madam? Is there a connection? That means
I haven't seen anybody, Mayuri or Savandi or Tarusha.
I think Tarusha Miss might be the
Yeah,
best person to
Tarusha?
ask.
Tarusha,
Yeah, to my knowledge, I don't think
can't hear you properly, Tarusha. Can hear you, but very vaguely.
is it okay? Right, to my knowledge, is it all right, Arusha?
Still very.
I don't know, I'm having some connection issues of late.
That's okay. We should be able to manage somehow. You can speak a little louder.
Yeah, sure. So as Pavithra very clearly explained and widely also continued, I totally accept the fact that it is a more quantitative oriented theory, whereas actor network would be more suitable from a qualitative perspective. So I wouldn't like to think about mixing the two. Instead, they could go in isolation based on your own methodological preferences, because their roots and how it has been used in management research is quite different. So I presume this could be used in a quantitative sense and actor network more in a qualitative sense. Is that okay? I hope you hear. Yeah. And also, I hope whether we could, building upon Nalaka's question, any suggestions for him also, because since this may not be quite useful, could we think of any suggestions from his perspective?
Sir, any suggestions? Sir?
Have to really think about what he's actually looking at. Nalaka, give me a ring.
Yeah,
We will
madam,
perhaps have a chat.
Right. Basically, I'm looking at employee engagement from entrepreneur perspectives, not direct engagement like it's a
But the way you are explaining, it looks like a quantitative study.
Yeah, same. I was thinking the same.
See, sure. Because engagement is from the employees, whether they
Yes.
feel engaged, why they engaged and all that. If you say from entrepreneur perspective, it's sort of like you want to see how an entrepreneur can increase engagement of the subordinates or something, which is quantitative. Anyway, have a chat with the stuff. Before Gihan, Gihan, give me a minute. There is a comment. There could, one person has mentioned, there could be a time difference gap between receiving social support and then reciprocating to organization, as it takes time to survive the flood of work-family conflict. So was time considered for your study? And those who still receive social support may not immediately reciprocate. Right? Yeah. So yes. So if you are sort of doing it like a intervention, or let's say HR has started this, let's say a new intervention to be more social, supportive, caring, whatever, then it would be good to, you can do a quasi experiment or a longitudinal study where you sort of do a baseline before in terms of their OCB, people's OCB, or how they are perceiving those type of things, measure it before. Then you introduce this new system where supervisors are trained to be more caring, and you change HR practices, whatever, to show to enhance social exchange, whatever, and then you measure the outcomes so many months later, because as you rightly pointed out, social exchange takes time for you to receive the resources, to build that relationship, feel obligated. Then you need to find a time where you can reciprocate appropriately, right? It's not like just getting the money and returning the money. So rightfully, yes, then it has to be done so. But I did it as a cross-sectional study for various reasons. So there, I was asking whether they are, on a daily basis, on average, whether the supervisor is like that. So assuming it has been happening or not happening, and then, what are the outcomes? So that's how cross-sectional studies are there. Yes, it's a big drawback, but that's how I looked at the relationship. It's not like whether supervisor is now or, last week became LMX or, supportive. Then to see the impact, then of course you need to give enough time gap. Yeah, that would be my answer. Yeah. Gihan, you still have that hands raised, or should I?
No, madam.
Okay.
Done, madam.
So
Thanks.
Wang Li has asked, social exchange theory can be used for individuals or group or organizations, or treat the group as individuals. I haven't seen social exchange theory used at organizational level. I haven't seen that, but you can use it between individuals to look at social exchange relationship between two people, like supervisor, subordinate, customer, and the sales rep or whatever. So those types, supplier and your organization, not organization, yeah. Or maybe you can use it at organizational level, supplier and the organization, things like that. But you are not treating group as an individual. As I said in that group gain part of it, there are those many individuals, how they exchange and reciprocate and share the benefits as a group. So there, its group is considered as a group, not as an individual, but you look at the individuals in that group.
Anybody else who needs any clarifications? If no, maybe we can then finish the session. And if you do have questions, you can always forward it to me, and I will try to get the answers through Prof. Pavithra. I will see the possibility of doing that. So thank you very much, Pavithra Miss, for a wonderful session. I don't know why you said you don't know and all of that. Whatever you did was very clear. And so if anybody is interested in this theory, of course, you need to read more. There would be a lot of articles in this area, and we would not be able to cover everything about a theory in a small session. So then you will have to read and understand what the theory is about. So thank you again for the time and the effort that you have put in. And thank you everybody for participating and asking questions. And we will meet again with another theory. And if there are any theories that you are particularly interested in, please let us know so that we can try to cater to that and have a session on that particular theory.
I would also like to thank Mayuri, Savandi, Tarusha, and you for jumping in and helping out and explaining and sharing your ideas as well. That's how discussions, and this should be, everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and some people know more. So thank you all.
Thank you then.
Okay.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks a
Bye.
lot. Have a safe day.